pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it
stands
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Want me to kick it over to?
I was going to say, do we want to do roll call?
Sure.
We do a quick roll call and then
We can. Mr. Abdallah.
Here.
Mr. Azar.
here.
Mrs. Henderson.
Here.
Mrs. Hillebrand.
Here.
Ms. Karam.
Here.
Mr. Moran. Mr. Robeson.
Here.
Mrs. Tierney.
Here.
Mr. Acker.
Here.
8 people present. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Okay. Dr. Schaefer, I'll turn it over to you for.
I apologize. I did not think through this meeting here in the gymnasium and the acoustics. So get used to making mistakes. I'm making work every day here. So I'm going to call out this letter and we're going to talk about our.
Thank you. Welcome to Waverly, everybody. We're excited to have you here. Our fourth graders are super excited to share with you their experience that they had this week as part of our annual reading tournament team. They have been reading lots of books since October with Mrs. Lee, their head moderator. So I'm going to turn this microphone over to Mrs. Lee, and then we're turning over to the kids. They're running the show tonight.
Students in efforts to read, collaborate, communicate, and hosting annual reading club. This event is an elementary, middle, and high school event. Students in grades 4 through 12 are invited to participate. Those are ready to form students of up to 12 students who then demonstrate their knowledge of 25 assigned levels of reading. This event continues to grow. Last year, 45 groups from across the NEIU region participated in the tournament, and it was even bigger this year. Those teams were able to compete this past month. We were asked 40 comprehension questions and given 30 seconds to answer a complete sentence. Not only did we do well, we did very well. To celebrate our accomplishments, we are planning the school board to compete in our own version of the reading event for the first annual yearly reading tournament. We'll provide you with a short passage about St. Patrick's Day and give you a few minutes to read it. Your team will then be asked questions in the same format as the NEIU reading tournament. The question will appear on the screen. This is for the reader twice. You will be given 30 seconds to answer a complete sentence. Each team will see 3 questions to swiftly look and have your reader. Remember, are you smarter than the reader?
All right, school board, let's get ready.
Passage, my friends. I'm going to give you a voice. Yes, and we have some questions to see. Now, this is the same passage the fourth graders are getting.
Give Gretchen 2, 1 for Anthony.
What do you say?
Did I cheat off of Gretchen?
No, it takes you to answer it in complete sentences.
Oh, my God.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
You guys have no idea how it's going.
Thank you.
Good. You're going to pass this to the crowd as well?
Fun to have a little conversation.
All righty.
Thank you.
Does the crowd get one too?
Oh, yeah. Parents.
The participants in the crowd get? What are we supposed to be doing here?
Not sure I couldn't do it.
What are we trying to do here?
We're gonna have to answer questions.
We have to answer questions.
Remember to answer in
Okay.
sentence.
Yeah, I got it now.
I may or may not be slightly competitive, so it's about
Sentences.
You have to answer
Respond to the.
must answer in complete sentences.
like Jeopardy. Oh, my gosh, okay. Have to be in the form of a question.
No, it's not Jeopardy.
It does not have to be the formal.
Just answer in a complete sentence. What are the teams?
That's four.
Yeah,
Us four, those three, those three.
All right,
Right?
This is our team. This is our team.
It's gonna be for our meeting team. The second question will go to our school board.
Oh, the whole.
No.
So remember, Mrs. Payne will read
Yes,
the
you can
question
use it.
twice, and you
Sure,
have 30 seconds to
It'll
answer.
be 25.
But we have one board person.
Ready?
I think Ray should be our.
Why is St. Patrick's Day celebrated? Why is St. Patrick's Day celebrated?
Yes.
Oh, can we steal it?
one? Yeah, all right. Who's going to be our captain? Somebody has to be the captain.
No.
They'll have to. No. You three, those.
Well, I think Grace should be,
No.
say a word at the last.
No, that's true, I
The dream team over there.
did. No.
Gretchen's the chair of the curriculum committee. She's.
Yeah.
Celebrated to honor the patron saint of Ireland, Patrick.
Very nice. Wow.
Okay.
All right, school board, this is your
Are you ready, girls?
question.
Ready, Anthony?
Ready.
What happened to Patrick when he was 16 years old?
Patrick was kidnapped.
What happened to
Sentence, second paragraph.
16 years
Second sentence, second paragraph, people.
Patrick was kidnapped.
Note the from and to.
I got
All
it.
right, we're ready.
All right.
She's ready.
Whoever wants to answer is fine.
Right here, she's got it. Grace has it.
It's on behalf of the entire board.
Have to be Irish to answer the question, right?
Patrick was
That eliminates it.
and taken to Ireland.
I'm sorry, did you put that in a complete sentence?
Yes, it was, but that was technically.
This is,
Patrick was kidnapped by pirates and taken to Ireland.
oh,
There was a bird in the first thing.
All right, number 3, this is our reading team. Where did Patrick escape to after leaving Ireland? Where did Patrick
They know it.
escape to after leaving Ireland?
He's so adorable. It's just like Jim.
After escaping Ireland, Patrick escaped and fled to France.
So question number 4 will be for the school board. Why is the shamrock linked to St. Patrick's Day? Why is the shamrock linked to St. Patrick's Day?
All right. Third paragraph, second to last sentence. Just read the sentence. Ready for answer down.
Ready? You happy to do it?
Are you ready?
Sure. You want to do it?
look at Gretchen.
only have 8 seconds.
Gretchen?
Gretchen, you ready?
What? Oh, me?
Yeah,
5, 4.
do better
How
than
about
Grace.
Rod?
Oh, shamrocks are linked to St. Patrick's Day because it's the state's flower and it goes back to the things that he used to preach about.
Yes.
We will get it.
Thank you.
Ooh.
I didn't know I was speaking.
Mickey's yours.
Mickey's next. I am not next. I'm all Italian.
All right, last question for community. Why was the date March 17th chosen to celebrate St. Patrick's Day? Why was the date March 17th chosen to celebrate St. Patrick's Day?
Because that is the day that Patrick died.
All right, last question from the school board, question number 6. How many years has the United States celebrated St. Patrick's Day? How many years has the United States celebrated St. Patrick's Day?
You say since?
Something soon.
286
years.
286 years.
It's 2024.
Go ahead, Tony.
All right, Anthony.
Rod.
200.
I'm on medication.
I know the number, I just want to answer.
Giving the answer.
I'm on medication.
Ready?
200. Go ahead, Mr. Acker.
Yeah.
86 years.
St. Patrick's Day has
St. Patrick's Day has been celebrated in the United States since 1730.
287 this year. You are correct.
All right.
Thank you for playing the game with us.
Thank you.
What it was like for them on Monday, they had 40 questions.
Wow.
25 books they had to answer, and they were absolutely amazing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have little certificates for you. I think Peter will. Landon.
Many people.
Good job. I'm all Italian. Okay, it's known to do green food coloring. Which is great. And I, yeah.
Necessity.
Really not, the green milk. Husband's all Italian. And you'd think that my name.
Right.
Doing the right thing. We're definitely, following the right path.
Everybody an opportunity.
Off we go. In the car. Yeah, it does. Gotta be really fast. Very fast. Very fast. I don't care about the wind in my hair.
Oh.
When these kids.
quick kind of overview again of the high school project, and talk about next steps. So really tonight is a lot about being here and able to answer your questions. As you recall, over the last 18 months now, we've did a whole new feasibility study of all the buildings in the district, really looking at building conditions as well as delivery of educational programs. We kind of found and highlighted that the middle school was in the most need as far as things that were needed to be improved, and certainly the interior of the middle school, kind of scoring at a higher rate of need for all the other categories of the other facilities in the district. Key takeaways are HVAC issues, introduction of modern spaces at all schools, and certainly the existing middle school in its half circle design, kind of creating a larger school. So if we look at the middle school, tonight we're going to talk about the middle school. There were three different options that were considered. A brand new school, just to start from scratch. There was another option to renovate the existing building and expand it. And another option to essentially build a new wing that may start as the kind of 5th and 6th grade wing, but really it's just for 2 grades of students. And a gymnasium, leave the existing building and possibly come back and renovate that in the future. There's a big cost difference between a brand new building and building a rather large addition onto the existing school as well. So looking at the financial implications of all three of those options, we talked a little bit about, well, if we just build this education wing in a gymnasium, what are the advantages, what problems does that solve, what does that look like in the future? So very quickly, if we look at an idea of creating an addition onto the side, basically right where the parking lot is, and creating a new front door for the entire school. So regardless of what grade is your child is going to, everyone arrives at that front door. That's the new main office for the entire facility. There's a new parking lot that's built right to the side of that, and it's a new front door to the entire school. We're talking about 2 grades, maybe 5th and 6th, that could go into that first section of the building in the gymnasium that could go right next to that. What would be nice as well is we could also separate public cars and buses, creating a larger parking lot, maybe a longer loop around that area to provide a little bit better circulation on that site for the vehicles. So this is what that might look like when you look at the state road. You see the existing school to the left, and that kind of new building space to the right. So if I'm driving up, probably driving and heading towards the blasted building on the right, that just looks like the new entrance to the school. What you're seeing there is the administration area on the first floor, library on the second. So as you turn that corner, you kind of come to the parking lot side, you can see a 2-story classroom area and the gym space. So this now is kind of the front of that school. Now the old school is still behind it, and that's fine. But this is kind of the new phase of that middle school. Right now you have 5th through 8th grade, all kind of in those 2 half-circle open pod areas. Taking half of those children away, taking, in this instance, the 5th and 6th graders out of that area, frees up an immense amount of space in that existing building. You can see here in the kind of open pod, pie shape, we talked a little bit about the existing conditions there. Building that new addition to the side, building that new parking space to the right, and essentially leaving that rest of that building for future needs. But just taking half of the population of those kids out of that half circle is going to give the 7th and 8th grade much more space to be able to spread out. The teachers much more area to advance their curriculum. A lot of the existing core space, like music and art, like theater, cafeteria, all of that can stay. Moving half of those space out of that half circle into the facility. So this is what that would look like for foreseeable future, and so if anything else was done here. Again, we have the main entrance here, we have the parking lot, a line of classrooms on 2 floors, the gymnasium, and then upstairs is the upper level of the new addition. There is a lower level to the existing school, but when I enter, you're essentially on that main level of the school. You can go down a half level, or down a level in the half circle, or up a level in We talked a little bit about gymnasiums. There was a need, a desire at the middle school to build a gymnasium and actually build a large gymnasium. Between the two at the high school and the two at the middle school, they're all relatively nice gyms, but they're not overly large. So even the large competition gym we have at the high school now is 76,000 square feet. We're talking about building a gym here that's about 10,000 square feet. So we're purposely making that a little bit larger, providing the school district with a lot of different options for the future. So if we're building a new gym, we say let's build this a little bit larger, a little bit more of a high school varsity size gymnasium. This could be for larger events, things like that. So it was kind of purposely not to build a larger gym than the school. So as we mentioned, it's 2 grades in that addition and then gymnasium addition. What does that mean for the future? You can always come back and renovate the middle school, or come back later and build essentially what we're saying is the upper half of a middle school. So and that would fit perfectly within the parking area. We can kind of expand that parking over a little bit. We really wouldn't have to touch anything that exists of the new addition that we're talking about now. We would build that future addition. That could be for 2 grades, it could be for 3 grades. So we could build that in the future, either partially over time, and then essentially take down the old half circle building, put in future fields or any type of other outdoor needs, and you get a brand new middle school. So what's intriguing about this is in the short term, providing this amount of space really alleviates a lot of the overcrowding in that school, but sets you up for future needs as well. You could come back that day, or you could come back and build the second half of that middle school in the future. So that's the middle school story. The elementary school story, essentially 4 of the same building. You guys did a lot of work in the 90s, fixed up a lot of the infrastructure there. But the 90s, unfortunately, is 30 years ago. So now it's kind of time to relook at those buildings and just look at the infrastructure, the heating, the carpets, the lighting, things like that that's in those spaces. So budget. How would we budget that, and how would that work in the scope? So we kind of said, if we're thinking about a $30 million investment spread out over the 4 schools. New Ramsey, South Abington, and Waverly are all pretty close to the same size. They're about 17 to 19% of the square footage of your elementary schools in your district. Clark Summit, remember that used to be a high school, is larger. So if we just take that as a number and say, all right, 46% of your area of school is Clark Summit, maybe appropriate 46% of the cost or the budget to that. All of these numbers, of course, are going to be exactly how that works out, but you kind of look at how that gets spread out over the 4 buildings, understanding that we are going to need to spend monetarily a little bit more at Clark Summit, only for the fact that it's a larger building. So if we try to look at the scope of all of those buildings and keep the scope the same, we're looking at things like classroom hardware, we're looking at things like chalkboard replacements, ADA compliance, making sure everything's accessible, switching out old fluorescent lights to new LED lights. So this is kind of the scope that would happen in all 4 schools. Again, there's just a few more classrooms in Clark Summit. If you look at Clark Summit, we have a lot of areas like this, at the lower level. That's kind of one side, there's classrooms to one side, and you're underground on the other side. It's very dark inside. So the dark interior, more light, more hardware, furniture replacements that would occur throughout all 4 schools. So everything that the students are touching, sitting on, interacting with all day long would be budgeted in that $30 million investment as well. So just trying to revitalize all the schools. We felt that $30 million investment over those 4 schools something that's achievable. And there's certainly grants out there right now in Pennsylvania for upgrading existing buildings. And lastly, and very quickly, I'll go through the ideas and some of the concepts of the high school. There was an idea at one point about having an extended addition in the rear. This was kind of creating new science labs so that the older, kind of undersized science labs can be renovated into typical classrooms. So the idea here, we're coming off the 70s edition here, that is a 2-story addition, we're running a 2-story addition around there, creating a little bit of interior courtyard. Those areas would then step down into essentially right outside the existing cafeteria kitchen here, and work their way into the curriculum space of the high school. All of this is 2 stories, and then STEM addition fit perfectly. That was the way to introduce new space to construction. And there was an idea of way of renovating some space in the high school as well. So this was done together with the addition, separate. One was done first, and one was done second. There was an idea here of just modernizing essentially the first and largest space that students see when they first come into the school. The library space is huge, very underutilized. There's the classroom space across the hall, this kind of step seating and things that you see in there. It's already there, we just kind of want to take a wall down and expose it. Now we've got a really nice area for students as a student common space. These windows right here, they're there right now. It's just a matter of kind of peeling back the onion and saying, hey, look, it's a really cool space that's on the other side of this wall. There's a classroom space just next to that could be very interactive, used for STEM as well. We talked about taking some of the older areas that one point was filled in, it's filled in, that's why some of those rooms have kind of jagged walls. Well, if we take all that out, just kind of open that out into collaborative spaces, instructional planning areas for teachers. So teachers have kind of state-of-the-art areas for their interaction and department meetings and things like that. And then just upgrading the existing library. And a really nice skylight this year, bringing natural light into the space. We just want to kind of upgrade that with furniture and new technology that we can bring kids back to those spaces. So this was a school we visited in Texas a couple years ago. I just thought that was a really cool, very similar situation that you have. This kind of steps where students can be, there's furniture that can sit there in the bay right across from the cafeteria, or in this case, they're having a little bit of a lecture and presentation. Another area that's kind of a library commons, so we have a very similar renovation that we're proposing there. And this is what kind of a student collaboration room looks like, just a space where the students can bring their laptops, sit down and collaborate together. This is an example of one of those instructional planning centers. For teachers, yes, there is a lot of capacity. It's meant to be there so that kids do come to you. We want kids to be able to interact with their teachers, be able to walk by and see you go, hey, you know that lesson I learned earlier? I was kind of nodding like I got it, but I didn't. So do you mind if we go over things? And so having the teachers be a little bit more accessible, that's why some of these areas are purposely designed for the real transform. So kind of as you were talking earlier, speaking about future investments, these are 3 projects that we were suggesting would be the first 3 to get started. Middle school expansion certainly we feel that's the most need. The high school renovation and some of the work there is great. We can do both of those things, one or the other. And then starting with the renovation at South Abington. South Abington is one of the smaller of the 4 schools. It needs work just like the other buildings as well. Because there are some grants out there, we feel like we should pick one and get started. That way, at least if a grant comes in, you have a project that's already been drawn, documented, approved, ready to go. It's kind of shovel ready, although renovation is not really using shovels. Building. So have this documented and kind of on the books. This is the project that could be submitted to the state for some grant funding when it comes to kind of revitalizing our schools. Timeline with the middle school edition, that was getting started in the summer. It takes about a year and a half of design and about 2 years of construction. So we're kind of looking at the fall 25, and we wouldn't be able to open that until the summer of 27. So even if you said go tonight, you're still 3 years away from opening any type of additional construction at middle school. Even a project like this in South Abington, you're looking at least a year to just get equipment nowadays. So you kind of start designing those things now, doing construction over the summer of 25, including it over the summer of 26, and then maybe just for financial planning purposes, you kind of push out the high school pieces. We're looking at the other 4 elementary schools. You could just knock those out. It's the same scope. Just knock those out one year after another, or couple them together and depending on your financial plans. So next steps is kind of looking at the board and saying, all right, these are the options. Is this where we want to start? Establishing that schedule. Yes, we're going to start with this one. We're going to start this number next. And then essentially moving ahead and moving it where that board feels is ready to go and selected for this year into next. So with that, again, any questions, any comments, anything that you want to review or talk about?
Yeah, you should probably ask the questions in front of our microphones. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, use the All right, Mr. Azar, you had your hand up.
So I had a couple of questions. So I don't remember seeing, maybe I didn't pay attention at that part of class, but I don't remember seeing the layout of the expansion at the middle school, like where exactly was happening. And when I look at that, it's right on top of the main parking lot. So the disruption that'll need to take place, like, have you thought through like how that would work?
Yeah, so step one, we're basically putting that right in front of the front door. So we're a year and a half to, that's not even the front door. So you do have a little bit of a lobby over by the gym. So what we've done in a lot of other cases is you essentially move your temporary security stations there. We can work with that principal to say, all right, how much stuff needs to move with that security personnel? We build temporary offices for the principal and the guidance. We just have to kind of work out. Sometimes what's best is just to create a little security area in the conference room. That way the teachers or the parents can go to the principal. We don't have to let them walk through the entire school. Yes, the principal comes to them, but at least that person is secured there. There would need to be some additional parking that could be built over the summer, but we are going to expand the parking lot. So you could have an area where teachers can park there. Contractors are going to need to park there as well. So coming in off that main road, probably wants to get shut down. That's just the contractors. That's the crane and the bulldozers and the trailers where the contractors would be. Everything else would be to the back. So we could, you have that little parking lot there that's next to the playground. Does that will expand a little bit to take over the parking and the using there? And then you create a new front door at the gym. Those are all the things that are, it's the saying, short-term gain, long-term gain. There's going to be at least an entire academic year where the front door is relocated. But safety and security methods and some temporary partitions and rooms and things like that, and make sure that remains efficient and safe.
Two more quick ones. The numbers for the elementary schools and well, for everything, obviously the middle school, but you mentioned the ADA upgrades. Does that include your math, all the bathrooms that are?
Yeah, so you're essentially, and again, that number was just taking percentages in the 30 year. So that's a limited, a $5 million renovation here. It's not going to cover it. We're focusing on the essential things, the boilers, the lines, and ADA accessibility is part of that. So while we go into a classroom, we have new lighting, new floors, new furniture. Furniture is important. There may be new whiteboards and things like that. There may be a whole lot of casework where there's a sink that's not ADA compliant. That sink comes out, and maybe all of that rest of that casework is there to remain. That's fine, we've done that. We can look at that and budget what's important and what needs to be included in that, and kind of see what falls out. The library space, you put in all the carpet and lighting, and the bookshelves. Bookshelves are fine. You can always go and buy new bookshelves, that's not a code issue. We want to make sure that the heating remains on all the buildings. We want to make sure that the plumbing and the accessibility aspects of those things are included in the
So then my last question, it looks like you're talking about doing South Ave, right? And then doing another elementary school in some period of time. Are there are there elements of these renovations that should be done or have, in other school districts where they've had multiple buildings, do you do all the boilers and all the lighting, instead of doing it school by school?
Yes.
Is another option to do project by project or some combination thereof?
Yes, it's always less expensive to do more in one go, but then you're spending a lot more money in one go. So if you were going to move ahead with middle school, if you could afford to do $30 million worth of elementary school work at the same time, great. You can get more covered. But that's not always physically able over planning. So if you went and bought all of the boilers for 4 schools, it would be less expensive to do that in one purchase than doing one this year, one next year, one next year, one next year. But can you plan to do that? Can you afford to do that in the fiscal plan if something is happening in middle school? So it's a great question. I would absolutely agree with you. It's more efficient to do them all at one time. It's just, do you have the financial ability to do them all?
Is it financial ability or is it being able to do multiple buildings at the same time, like from an operational standpoint?
There's nothing in any of those projects that we couldn't do all 4 at the same time. We're doing 2 down in Delaware County, 2 elementary schools at the exact same time. They're 3 miles apart from one another, but it's the same contract. It's essentially the same school. So there was some economy of scale. The thought of this was, again, there's grant money out there, pick one, you can really make it argument for it. Clark Summit is the one that's going to be more expensive, again, just because of the size. But pick one and get one on the books. So we can say we're going to get $3 million for South Abington. Great, get that. That's $3 million going to get spread out over all of them. It's really not the original. It's going towards adding to the district as a whole. So get something started. And certainly, if the board wanted to be a little bit more proactive in all of those buildings, we could design all of them, document all of them. Maybe there are a few things that could be, hey, let's do all the boilers in the summer of 25, and we wouldn't get them in December 24. But let's do all the boilers in replacement in the summer of 25. We're going to renovate South Ave, renovate as well. And then we'll come back in 26 to do New Ramsden, but at least the board will go on. So we could section it off that way as well. The boilers are really the expensive thing to pay for. Carpet and lighting and things like that is you could buy them. There would be an economy scale with expensive things like mechanical equipment to do that.
Thank you.
So,
Mrs. Tierney, Chair,
no,
did you have a question?
I did. That was one of my questions. Another one is, I love the plans for the high school. I think that they look absolutely wonderful with all of that open classroom. But is there any concern with the environment of safety of having, such an open space for students with the threat of an attack?
Right. So with school safety, our first point is always keep the bad guy out. So the biggest part of school safety is just keeping somebody out, so like somebody in. So that way you then have the ability to practice your lockdown scenarios. So again, all the doors are locked, it's propped open, and there's no way for somebody to get in. If there's an incident, the principal has enough time to announce lockdown. In a lockdown situation, you are in the it is practice to leave and go to a closed classroom. Think about a lockdown during lunchtime or during gym time. No, it's a lockdown. I need to go to the locker room because that's where I've been taught. The gym teacher knows. Don't be out in the gym. We need to go to the locker room to lockdown. Same with cafeteria, same if you're in an open area like that. In that lockdown scenario, you go to the closest classroom. That teacher knows, hey, the lockdown, I gotta go out and check. Hey, guys, in the open common space. You guys are coming in here. So the practice of all of those things are being instituted and included in every school obviously because of their educational benefits. And again, when we talk about school safety, bullying, things like that, the introduction of natural, the introduction of social spaces, things like that, helps alleviate all of those things as well. So there's a lot of security and benefits of having those types of spaces as well. But anytime you're concerned, rightfully so, about a situation where even a fire is involved, what do I do if I'm in the
those open spaces. We practice that ahead of time. The teachers know, students know where to go, how to go, a lot of the weather or something like that.
Thank you.
Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, I want to follow up on something that Mr. Azar said, just to clarify. So hypothetically, if we wanted to take advantage of economies of scale, we would need to have all those designs done simultaneously, correct?
Yeah, and again, that can be separated. We're just talking mechanical systems. That's not interrupting the classroom. That's, down the hall, the boilers in place, that can be done over the summer.
Right. So, and I'll kind of link this to, we had a discussion during the finance committee with David Payne from PNC. So, for relatively few dollars, and I shouldn't say few dollars, but in contrast to the scale of the project that we're talking about, we go ahead and we did those designs, and next year we're having a discussion with PMC, our bond counsel, and PFM, and they say, hey, the interest rates have gone down by 1% or 2%. We're now comfortable with a much larger bond that would then, this is what I'm hearing here, is like allow us to say, purchase all of those boilers and start that, because the one major element that precludes us from doing this right now is we have our timeline for a reason. We need time to ramp up to pay for that debt service. But we also know that things can look very different in 1 year. But if we don't have you do design work, starting in March, it'll all be for naught.
Right.
So it seems like the risk is worth the reward here.
I was going to say the same thing, exactly. I completely agree.
Having the plan of all that done allows us to react. So again, if you don't get funding from the state, then maybe we push that off a little bit. All of a sudden we go, hey, yeah, great, what else you got? Oh, okay, well, there's 2 more that we have. Let's put those in and get going. The infrastructure, the boilers and the heating system of all 4 schools are relatively the same. Again, our son's a little bit bigger. So because you replaced them all 30 years ago, it's kind of doing the same thing. It's just that the boilers last about 25 years and you're putting on in the 30s. So that's good on your maintenance department. There's only so much they can do with these systems and things start to kick out over time. So that's something that could be planned, could be ready. It's just a matter of switching out that infrastructure over the summer. No one will see that. The things that people see are classrooms, the carpets, the furniture, stuff like that. That's stuff that can also be planned and be part of that project, or can be done separately. Those are the things that can be planned out, because now that's a lot of work to do over the summer. We're going to try to do all 4 schools in 1 summer. That's a lot of work to clear all these out.
So just to follow up on what you said, so if you magically had all this design work done right now, right, we could move forward, and next summer, like you just said, you could do all the boilers and all the carpet in all the elementary schools, right? And so
Next summer, do you mean?
next summer, 25.
25.
Sorry, not this summer, next summer. So like when we talked about this last time, one of our concerns is if you just did one building at a time, whichever building is the 4th building, there's a lot of risk between here and that building getting anything, right? Where like, if
you're going to run out of money.
You could run out of money, the markets could change, the board could turn over, there's so many things that could change. But if you do a little bit, if you do the same project in all the schools every summer, but you need the design work to do that, right? That's what I'm hearing. You need to have that stuff all pre-designed and drawn.
The 2 schools I mentioned, there's a lot of work in the summer. There's some stuff they're doing over the school year, but it's kind of a lot slower. Everything's happening after school, because we can't interrupt education, so we're going to contract with all those kids there. And then the next summer, they're finishing everything else up. So getting those boilers in place, and it's a matter of ceilings and lights. Carpet, certainly buying furniture. That's something that can be done as a group, and there's certainly economies of scale. Like I said.
Emily?
What percentage of the project cost would the design cost be?
So we gave that as a part of our submittals to the school as a contract for that. So everything is kind of done on a percentage basis, because that way if you're adding things, maybe you have to design more things, it costs a little bit more, and so it goes up as a percentage of that. So typically, architects and engineers who work on percentage of construction. For the middle school, it's a bigger project, so that percentage is a little lower, because monetarily, they're a little higher, percentages are, and it's a lot more new. It was, not to say easier, but it comes with a lot less surprises. So building that as an addition, now that includes the civil engineering, because now you are working a shovel, you are making things like that. So that's something that as soon as you guys have the green light to that, the civil engineers are next thing to hire and get started. I know there's some studies going on that say the sewer system and all that, that certainly has to be put into, because you're going to be adding load. You're adding toilets, you're adding more use into that system. So all the stuff that we're talking about renovating them, you're adding to it, that's going to be part of that as well. And that can be a big budget figure as well. We want to make sure that that's not some $5 million contribution surprise all of a sudden. So that's what we do in the school. So studying that and getting that out of the way is important stuff as well.
Other questions? Before, okay, I have when we originally started talking about this, I know one of the items you talked about was security, and talking about, in particular, the entrances and so on. In terms of the numbers, the dollars we're talking about now, how are we going to be able to address those issues?
So here at Waverly, there's an idea of addition.
Yep.
That's not included in the numbers that we show.
Yep.
Again, not to mean we couldn't do that in the future. So this building in particular has a challenge because it's so far distant. You do have some cameras and some intercoms and things like that to help balance that. So that's something that can be upgraded. Better cameras, more cameras, not only inside but outside of the building as well. So those are the types of things that could be included. But without really building an addition here, it's hard to link that front door and the office just because of where it is. Clark Summit, which was the other one, that's across the hall. So that is something that could be, we're going to take a little bit of money out of some other areas of Clark Summit, but we could try to create a space where we can move those because they're not as far or as connected as it's. I believe at New Brampton as well as South Ave, they have done some work there in the past to help link those up to have that lock vestibule going right into the administration. So within the budget of all those things like cameras, communication upgrades as well, buildings, there's a few exterior doors here and there that we would look at to make sure that those are locked. And if they need to be replaced, that's something that can be replaced as part of a security review for the building as well. So there's no addition necessarily here, but there'll be a certain focus on security of all four buildings.
What kind of magnitude, like, it's not in your 30 million, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but like those additions were big numbers, right? Many, many millions of dollars. Like to do the type of comm and camera upgrade and door upgrades, like what type of?
So cameras are about 1.5 square foot, so any of these buildings is $60,000 for cameras. You're also putting in most of the fire alarm systems in some of the buildings were not too bad, but public address systems should be upgraded as well. So one of the things that we look at for safety as well is that anyone anywhere can make a building-wide announcement. Put in a 4-digit code and say, hey, lock down this side, or hey, the second floor is, something is going on and we need emergency assistance. That's something that can be in the budget for, can be upgraded in the schools. So we'll sit with you guys and go through that list of what's most important to include. And then look to address all those things as part of the renovation.
When does that happen? Like during the design phase or?
Yeah, like, first day. We're gonna talk about boiler rooms and infrastructure. We're gonna talk about classroom spaces, and we're gonna talk about safety and administration. And like I said, each building's a little different. So one or two, they just kind of adding some, intruder resistant ways going on some doors. We'll do, walkthroughs. Again, this is one of the older buildings. There are doors in some areas. And say, hey, you know what, maybe we want to replace these exterior doors. If you shake it hard enough, it just kind of opens up. It's something we want to take a look at. So we'll do a safety analysis again of all four buildings. Certainly address everything that we would see.
I'd like to see an entrance here. We've been talking even in the meeting prior, we've talked about field work at the high school. In terms of the dollars you listed there, does that include field work?
No.
No?
Not that initial amount. So if that can be its own thing, that can be separate. The high school 20 million idea was the addition and some renovation in the middle of the building. Anytime you renovate, it's pushing that first downward line. Everybody just wants to keep doing it. Well, what about the second floor here? It's like, well, yeah, but there's only so much. There's only so much to do about that. So if the budget focuses on new science labs, perfect. So that'll show addition right on the second floor. Pittsburgh. Part of that priority is renovating that library space, that corridor for the first win. All three of those front door entrances where the bus drop off, all go into that corridor. It's the first thing everybody will see. That's the new kind of renovated corridor, the library, and all those things. Every kid's going to touch that at some point during the day. That's a great place to start. Should you renovate all the other stuff? Sure, but that's where the costs have to go up. Now you just need to budget for that. But I think those two select additions, the addition and the renovation of the front, are two great ways to start.
But in terms of the numbers we're looking at right now, the field work that we've discussed at the high school would be a separate project with separate funding.
Yes.
Okay. A couple questions on the allocation of funds, and obviously it's, you've chosen a concept to say, how do we spend what, where, so that we do it in some sort of equitable fashion. Is there any thought of looking at that in terms of student population as opposed to square footage?
Student population
For the elementary schools. So for instance, we're saying we're going to spend about $30 million on elementary schools. And we said, well, one way of looking at it was dividing up that $30 million based upon the square footage of the buildings. Any thought of looking at it in terms of the student population? So our elementary schools have 1,200, let's say 1,200 students or whatever. So each school has X number and we'll allocate those funds based upon the number of students in each school.
I think it's more, we're talking physical needs. So the physical needs at the middle school are more.
Not the middle school, the elementaries. The elementary schools.
Again, what we're going to renovate is physical. So whether you have 200 kids or 100 kids or 300 kids, it's the size of the building. The heater has to keep the entire building. We're going to carpet every classroom. There's, again, more classrooms at 14 than there are other spots. So whether there's clearly more kids at 14, because again, it's a bigger building. So we just kind of looked at that as area. We're going to recarpet. So of course we're going to be buying a bit more carpet one than the other. We just looked at it as a physical aspect because that really is what you're spending money on the physical part of the building. I think your occupancy or your capacity in all four schools was fairly even in the sense that you have a few more kids in one proportion than others, but nothing was really out of whack. So it kind of makes sense then that you allocate that money across the board at the size of school, because you kind of are including more kids at the one bigger school, but the other 3 schools are somewhat the same population.
So when we do this work, and obviously Clark Summit Elementary is the biggest elementary school we have. And will we be able to build in excess capacity in Clark Summit Elementary so that in the future, if we want to try and level out the schools, if for instance, we have a larger population of students in Waverly or in Ransom and we're now completely at capacity, so we have to go someplace, will we be able to create or have capacity at Clark Summit Elementary?
Yeah, absolutely. And you started with a better addition. So if you were going to add an addition onto Clark Summit now, you'd have a brand new addition inside and the rest of the building. So, well, why didn't you address this? If everything's addressed, and that's what's kind of nice, but it's a lot of money. It's spread out over a lot of buildings. But it's going to hit all 6 buildings. Every child is going to go through, whether it's part of the elementary school, they're going to go through the new addition at the middle school, they're going to go through all the new stuff that's going on at the high school. So every elementary school is improved by this. And really at every step from K to 12, they're going to be touching something that's been renovated, addressed, and upgraded at some point in this life.
Okay, I got a couple more, I apologize. So South Abington, as we all know, is in a floodplain, which, unfortunately kind of says to us, it would be hard to build like a new school there or whatever. But obviously it's a great school. It serves the community. People love the school. So as we make upgrades there, have you thought about what we can do to, minimize the impact of future water damage? This last fall, we had a flood that we came really close to losing it. So what can we do there that will help us? Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't.
Not replace carpet with carpet.
I'm walking a tight rope here because we're not going to close the school, obviously, but we also want to make sure that we're going to invest some money in it. We hope it's not going to wash down the notch.
There's really no scenario where that building's not better for.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, let's fix it up. And the stuff that you're looking at, boilers and flooring and painting and stuff like that, that's $5 million a lot. We're not talking about we're not building a big addition.
Yep.
Those are big things that I'm steering in that direction. But the selection of materials of things and the location of things is something that it's at Abington we take a closer look at. So the boiler maybe I want to done
Exactly.
But we wouldn't put part of that. There's tile that can go down there that if it did get wet, and get mopped, and it stays glued to the ground, it's fine. It doesn't get soaked up and doesn't create mold over time. So it would certainly be materials that would be chosen knowing that they were let's not make everything deep mold soft.
Okay, final question. I apologize to my fellow board members. And I think I know the answer to the question, but we've talked about, and we've had the $38 million number for the middle school renovation. And obviously, as the financial numbers have come in a little bit better, and we've all said, well, let's try and grow this project a little bit. And so in the last cut of kind of dividing up the funding, middle school was at $50 million. So we've gone from 38 to 50. What changes do you envision in that? What's that $12 million going to buy us, if you will?
Yeah, I think it seems like we're building this addition as the concept of the first half of something, and that second half maybe 10, 15, 20 years.
Yep.
I wouldn't spend too much of that extra $10 million back inside the existing building. There may be scenarios, and again, if in the scenario where it's 5th and 6th, the 7th and 8th stay in the house, there's probably a science lab or something like that. They could be created. Again, it's still 10 or 15 years of students going through those spaces. So there may be a little bit more that we decide to touch on in that aspect. And science labs comes to mind. The science labs that are there now are really just undersized, there's not very much lab in the science lab. So maybe that's something that gets created there. Again, we're going to break the bank on it, but there might be a little bit more that we can do in that existing building. And then we could also possibly build a little more. If that gymnasium sits there, and again, we started to talk about that piece that kind of keeps building that way. Maybe that's where music and art goes. Maybe that's where music and art goes there, and then we have a science lab someplace else. You've got a couple of STEM labs, you have to walk through one to get to the other. Well, maybe that's a new STEM space. So you almost design the rest of the middle school knowing that we're going to have, and that's what's kind of nice about that layout. We have a lower elementary school, whether it's fifth or sixth. We have an elementary wing, then the commons, which is gym, cafeteria, STEM, and then eventually we build an academic wing for, let's say, 7th and 8th. So all of that common stuff, that could be added. We could add a little bit more there. We could have another academic space. Maybe the science labs go there. Middle school kids have to walk. In the back, behind that auditorium, is where you have health room, art, music, and some of the STEM spaces. So that corridor is already kind of established. You could just kind of continue and have a few more of those newer spaces there. That's something that we would want to work out with you guys, and again, your curriculum team, the principals there, say, hey, if we're going to go to more rooms, what should they do? So I think investing, if you're going to invest more, you want to invest more in new. That doesn't mean that maybe 2 science labs, one on each floor, 7th grade, and 8th grade, one in that existing circle, wouldn't be a bad idea either. And again, they'll have the space to finally do that. Take 2 of those, kind of old open pod squares there. Let's take 2 of them and make one big lab. Face it that way, that's the wing where the conditions can happen. There's that new thing for those kids.
Thank you very much. Mr. Azar.
So 2 follow-up questions. One's pretty quick. The other one's probably long and probably not going to get finished today. The first one, to Mr. Acker's comment about distributing the 30 million. Newton Ransom was only built 25 years ago. Waverly was built 100 years ago. So is there thought yet, and I know this is an iterative process and like we're going to get together and like we're not deciding anything today, but just, and I know that we're thinking like macro, high level right now, but to me, it seems, I would think that Newton Ransom doesn't need as much as the other schools. So there could be some movement in those numbers, just those square footage numbers, right?
Right. The exercise of that was just trying to show how that gets distributed, how quickly 30 million is by.
Right.
And we just look at the distribution. So if you look at the index, and for good cause, it's a newer building, it may not need as much of that number percentage goes down a little bit because we're able to fix a few more things someplace else. With the balance of the checklist of things that we're doing, it's still people everywhere. Right. Infrastructure, heating, the ADA compliance I'm talking about. Ceilings, lights, just putting an LED light throughout the place is going to reduce your energy consumption by advancing. Putting in new windows is going to reduce your energy consumption. So there's a lot of things that we're going to do everywhere that may cost a bit less in one school than another. Just because it's a little new. So that is absolutely something. It's that the numbers that we're showing aren't the final. We're going to stick with that. Yeah. Let's just spend more here, but we have to cut things there. We're going to make that checklist of 7 or 8 things, and we're going to make sure we hit them at all the schools, and it costs a little bit of a different amount because of the age.
Yeah, I mean, the more I hear you go through stuff like this today, the more and I know we're all going to keep talking about this, but it seems to me that we as a board will be a lot more equipped to make decisions on where to allocate capital if we have you do all this design work, at least on the elementary schools, up front, because if you just design one school, you're not going to necessarily know what wiggle room you have in the other projects. We have a defined amount of capital that we have to invest. I know I would like to know what's the scope of services in all the buildings, so then we could make some allocation choices.
We did that in the study. We gave a similar analysis of the same topics for each building. Some scored better than others.
Yep.
Newton Ransom, the security, again, they do have a secure estimate that's there. When we talked about adding 1 or 2 doors, a lot. other schools might need a little bit more than that. So again, let's make that list, let's make sure that the results are equal, so there's parity throughout, I think we did. Like I said, even if it's a little more dollars on one spot than another, every building will be able to a certain level of infrastructure, safety, and classroom.
So my longer question, a couple meetings ago, I don't know how many meetings ago it was, we were talking and I put you on the spot because I just thought of it. And the idea of if we're only going to do 2 grades, does it make sense to do 7, 8 instead of 5, 6? I don't know if you've had any thoughts about that specifically since that initial thought. You know, when I think about it, and this is a layman finance guy, not an architect, right? So I have no idea if it's right or not. But I look at that half circle and I say to myself, if you're going to put 2 grades in there, I would prefer to put the 2 grades that don't move as much. And 5, 6 doesn't move as much as 7, 8. But I don't know if that's architecturally.
It was an interesting thing to certainly address that. Our thought was 5th and 6th, because they don't move as much, it's not as big of an addition.
Right.
Maybe because we're adding a few more dollars to that, maybe we could be looking at that. The size of what we were looking at is pretty much an elementary school layout. And then when you get into the 2 half circles, now they're going to have a bit more space to make some things that they can move around better as well. Another thought there is just the transition. You're pulling 5th graders out. They're still little kids in 5th grade coming with a big new building, and they're going to go to an area that is not new. So maybe that transition to 6th grade is a little easier if you're in the newer portion. It's certainly a conversation to have, and we can think of that again. Just as the planner, I'm thinking if that wing is middle school, it's going to be more expensive because middle school is going to need more things, bigger things. You already we could look at that.
If we were going to go from 40 to 50, that might be
Maybe.
the other reason why I thought of it. And then I'm done. Sorry. If you build that as 5, 6, and we talked about this a lot as a board, we maintain the flexibility. We don't have to decide whether we're going to do the renovation idea that you guys laid out of the half circle, or if we're going to bulldoze it and then build phase 2 in however many years. But if you make that 5, 6, one of the flexible options that I like is that someday, not only could we either renovate the half circle or build 2 more grades, but we maybe could build 3 more grades. If we grow a lot in the next 7 or 8 years and we're busting at the seams and we need to move 4th grade out of the elementary schools, can you add easily to that design? Because you'd want to put 4th grade with 5, 6, right? You'd want to separate 7, 8. I mean, that's what I've heard before, right? So
yeah, 7 and 8, and then whoever else is there. So if it's 5, 6, on one side, 7, 8, on the other, regardless of which side it is, that makes no sense. 4th grade you probably have 4th and 5th together, and then 6, 7. So if you're building those 3, sure, you could build 3 and have 4th, 5th, and 6th, like you do 7, 8. So there's a couple of different options. That's why that works so well. Where the addition sits, it turns away from the middle building. It allows you to kind of go as far and as long as you want.
you go 2 or 3, you can make it 4 or 5. Right.
So that allows you to build whatever you need to at that time. So it's a good conversation. We can come back and forth on that. Obviously, once we build those rooms, they're going to be built for a certain age group. I think at the time when we were showing that addition, we were showing the half circle being renovated. So this could be much more open if it was renovated. So let's keep that as the 7 and 8 grade because they'll move around.
Right.
So they have more space there. If we never think of doing that, do we change our mind about the 5, 6, or just it's called an elementary wing and middle school. We can still build that middle school wing some other day and build that a little bit larger as well. Right. So I think even when you ask that, kind of going back and forth, it's a good thought, it's a good conversation to have. We should have it again, but I kind of keep going back to probably elementary, just because of the size and location. If we want to get bigger, if we want to be more expensive, wider, all kinds of other things, if it was middle. And again, we can sit here and say, well, there's an argument from both sides, so again, we'll work that out and pick one.
Right. Thank you.
just to stay on that note,
Ms. Tierney.
Dr. Schaefer, academically, would you think it is better, or does it not make a difference to have the elementary kids in the addition and have the not the fifth and sixth graders and have the seventh and eighth graders? Do you think there's an academic difference with the?
I don't see one. I think we've done a very good job here teaching and kids learning in places and spaces that sometimes push the adequacy limit. So I don't see any I just don't see any, deterrent to it. But I think it's a good question that you just honestly have to think about, regardless if you don't do it in the future. Like when I was in Philadelphia, there are 26 different permutations that we had. And all sorts of districts, cut that up in different ways. So it's always good to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Adrella, you've been sitting there patiently.
That's all right. In our numbers, is that new furniture in the schools or no? And like the high school, is that new furniture in high school?
In the elementary schools, that is factored in.
Okay.
In the middle school, yes, where we're building new. And the high school, yes, where we're building new and we're renovating new. That's not everywhere in high school. It's basically just where we're touching.
But is it like new flooring in the high school where the carpeting is?
In the areas that we're serving.
So
of course,
like the second floor of the high school where the carpet is, we're not touching it.
That was my
It's not in the numbers.
Huh?
It's not in his numbers.
Okay.
So and again, if somebody came and said that's absolutely something that's needed, then that just comes out of something. And those things will happen. We'll have this conversation. We'll bring that back to the board and say, here's 4 other things that kind of fell out of the budget. That's not where the budget is. You can add those things, but when you're consciously saying, we need a few more dollars, we always kind of say as well, do the things with us that you couldn't do without us. You can replace part of that. You don't need an architect, you don't need a building permit to replace part. You do need an architect and building permit to build the addition. So there's things like that that you wanted to do and couldn't afford it this time. Pick those things that you just hire a contractor to do over the summer, like replace parking. Do that.
Does it touch the auditorium?
No.
That was what, no.
No.
What was the question?
To touch the
It says the
auditorium.
auditorium.
So I think that the auditorium and the others, I go back to what David said, and it's kind of like conversations Jim and I have about budget projection. So we provided a budget projection for 10 years to PFM, knowing that, it's hard to even project 3 years out. Next year at this point, we're going to be having a discussion, and there are some potential tailwinds I talked about. And if those come to fruition, then this timeline and the scope of work may be different. So Anthony, to answer your question is, we may go back to KCBA and say, look, we're now able to do some light renovations in this part of the high school and in this part of the high school. So I think what we're talking about now is going to be very different what we're talking about 3 years down the road. But one thing is for sure is that the middle school, based on everything I've heard, is a priority. And the nice thing about that priority is we're talking about brand new construction. And brand new construction that is kind of adjacent to a new building. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you're not linking it yet. That's the last thing that happens. When you connect the old to the new.
Yes, during construction.
Yeah.
Mrs. Henderson, any questions? And
Mr.
Rosen.
Thanks. So in terms of the cost, it sounded like a lot of the numbers are focused on capital expense. When we're adding whatever option we choose, there's going to be more square footage at least in the middle school, potentially the high school. What is the cost, the operating cost per year for the options, because, you know, these are nice round numbers, but what are we gonna have to incur to run operations in the new space?
It's a good point. The good news is everything that's built is gonna be very efficient. To your point, it's more stuff. So there's more building now to operate. So your utility costs will be higher with that because you're adding more facilities. You're not adding more kids, you're really not adding any more teachers. It's a janitorial question, if you need to add more staff. So those are some of the indirect costs that would be budgeted for and presented as well. So once we design what that building looks like, we can run that through what's called an energy model, come back and say, hey, this new building is going to take out X amount of kilowatt hours times whatever you're paying. This is how much additional cost we think operating a larger building would be. Very efficient building. The end users, like I said, are teachers and kids you already have. So it's not like we're expanding something for 50 new teachers that you're looking at. We're really right-sizing the size of the middle school. The first thing we found when we're looking at the middle school is just drastically undersized. It should be as big as what we're showing now. So we can run those numbers as we're working on budgets and say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. There will be additional operational costs. We're building a bigger building. Here's what we think that will be. And then working with your financial group as well. So yeah, we will need to hire another janitor. Or here's another thing or two that we feel might be needed indirectly as a result of the building. Again, principal, assistant principal, they're just moving, you have them, they're moving into the new spot. Fifth and sixth grade teachers, you have them.
Yeah, no, I know what the categories are. I want to know what the dollar per square foot is.
We can figure that out.
Because
as that gets built, we can come back and be able to show what that utility costs would be by adding 60,000 square feet.
Is that what it is, 60,000?
Yes, in those two additions, yeah, between the gym and the academy.
Okay, so would $16 per square foot be an average number for operating costs?
I don't know what the electrical rates are. So,
In general?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because my point is, that's an extra $1 million
But,
every year.
but the new furnaces and lights in the other schools are gonna save us money, right? Is that an accurate statement or no?
True. So we could do that to really good study. With the energy reduction that you're going to get, for elementary schools, does that offset the additional costs that we're doing? I think that'd be a good study to have. Again, everything that we build would be efficient, low water consuming, lighting, so it's going to be very efficient. We can run that number and say 60,000 square foot addition. With these utilities are going to cost an additional X, but to your point, here's the 4 elementary schools with more fuel efficient boilers, lighting are saving less. So you're adding 60,000 square feet, you're renovating, it's 200,000 square feet between the 150,000 square feet between the 4 elementary schools.
Yeah, it's not a net zero. We're not getting that much energy savings, right? It's going to be close to $1 million a year.
A year? No.
Not every year?
No. I'm texting Jim. We've locked in our electrical rates. That seems like a really, really high number.
You're also not going to use the whole existing middle school. I mean, there's going to be portions of that are dark.
No.
So there's some,
the new building
it's not like you're going to
operate be a separate system, because again, someday we might disconnect from the rest of that building as well. So that can be a very efficient system operating essentially on 2 buildings. We could even meter it and find that. Maybe we can test and see how that works. But utility costs, just as schools, is much less as far as how much per kilowatt hour is on electricity from both. So it's certainly. So we can work that out with what we have and get back to it.
I think the bottom,
There's more to keep.
I mean, to Mr. Robeson's point, there will be increased operating costs. And to that extent, as we know them, we will be building those into the projections we have going forward. And it may be that they're significantly high, and it may mean we spend less at the end of the project if that happens, because we don't have the financial wherewithal to finish it. I mean, it'll have to be rolled in as we go and as we identify it.
You'll have to look at the direct costs, which is how much of it's cost. And even also what's going to happen the year after that to make sure that, we're building this great school. We're going to have to hire 30 new teachers. So that actually is that's part of the process.
Yeah.
Saving money on some aspects and spending money on
Mr. Tierney.
Is everyone finished? This is more of a question for the board and the administration. I just want to get a better handle on our timeline. So, and when we're making decisions, and if some of these decisions are contingent on, our resolution, and so where are we? And for our next meeting, are you looking for us to actually, pull some plugs and go into a direction of setting them out to do some design? So how are we going to make that decision as a board to, what do we want first? And are we going to do it all together? I just,
You're going to vote.
Great questions, but I need to,
So we've been.
What are we going to do first?
We've been talking about this for a while, and what I did is I set up a target date in the very beginning of March 20th, and we have a series of votes that we have to do, everything from the funding to design work to another company to do some inflow and infiltration. But what it sounds like, and maybe we do kind of like a straw poll here, is it seems like there's more upside to adding to a draft contract I have with KCBA for South Ave and middle school design, the other elementaries. Because again, there's no downside to that, unless something catastrophic happens and you don't have enough money to do, 3 elementary schools. We're not saying that, because Mike's taking a year and doing a design work, that we have to move forward with it, because we can't do all that. But if something happens and Governor Shapiro's budget comes across as proposed, PlanCon 2.0 happens in the summer, we get more subsidy, the cyber tuition rate becomes balanced. It's a very different discussion we're having, but at least we've got Mike doing that so we can do economies of scale, save some money by buying all our boilers and things like that. So to answer your question, we'd vote on an agreement with KCBA to immediately start the design work on all of the elementaries and the middle school. Okay. And again, the board can always back out of that at this point. We're not at a place where, you've signed a contract with a general contractor and you're on the hook for $50 million. That's not
all you're doing is getting design work.
Yeah.
You're not paying for a shovel in the ground. You're not making a decision at this point. All we're doing is saying, design it. And to all the questions everybody's asking, when KCBA is done with that, we're going to have a better idea of exactly what the costs are. We may find that we need a new roof at, Newton Ransom suddenly that we didn't know about, but we're going to get better information. We'll probably have an idea of what the operating costs are going to be at that point, or have some better handle on it. So we're going to do all that, and then in a year, we're then going to have to, when they're finished with their work, then we're going to have to make some decisions on what are we doing, what are we building, what's the sequence we're going to do this in, and what are the specifics we're going to do in each school. So what we're going to be doing short term is kind of a prelude to the big dance, if you will, which is going to be in a year.
So, and will that trigger us then to vote on a resolution to go into debt?
No, so this is what's gonna,
That's-
so this is what to be in front of the board. And that cycle could continue relative to your question. So there'll be an agreement with KCBA. And to be clear, 8 to 10 months from this point, Mike would be coming back. If the middle school was a project, we'd have a public hearing about what we're gonna do and how we're gonna pay for it. And that is kind of the prelude to the bidding process. So we probably have to make some decisions, you know, sooner rather than later. But that seems to me, at least from everything that I've heard, it's like the middle school seems to be priority. I haven't heard anybody say, let's do the elementary, you know, all the elementaries before the middle school. So that's the first one. Then the second, whatever order we have them, the second one would be to vote on the parameters of the borrowing, right? To incur debt, because we will do that. Because the first, as David said, the first bond is like 10 million, because at 10 million, you could get a 5-year call. So you can refund that in 5 years. If you get more money, then you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have an 8-10-year call on that. And Jens, our bond attorney, is comfortable with us taking, I mean, not everybody can do this. I mean, to be clear, we're doing this because we can get some positive arbitrage. We can put it in a Pennsylvania trust and get a good return on our investment. But we're able to do that because we, one, have a lot of projects, and two, we have money in capital reserve. So if something catastrophic were to happen, they're like, well, look, Abington Heights took out $10 million and they got plenty of work to be done, and they have money to pay for that, right? So you'd be voting on to incur debt resolution. We'd also be voting on a look back resolution or a reimbursement resolution. That way we can pay engineers and architects out of a cap before we get the bond. So for instance, another thing you'd be voting on is labella. We have to do an inflow and infiltration study for the sewage at the middle school. That has to be done. And that's going to start very soon. But we will have a reimbursement resolution. So when we pay labella, you know, and it's not a huge contract, I think it's $44,000 total. But let's say we pay them $5,000 out of cap reserve. Once we get the bond, we can reimburse ourselves.
So, and I think in the interim, what's going to happen, so we're going to theoretically hire KCBA to do the design work. That's going to be a period of time in which nothing's going on. And so we then, the question we will then have is, do we want to do a project that's self-contained, if you will, in the interim? And I think that the project we have discussed, no decisions have made, is to do some field work, which is specifically why I asked Mike about where the money for the field work is in the overall scheme. But theoretically, while they're doing their work, and before we put any shovels in the ground for the middle school or in the elementaries, we could do that field work. Although it's a low priority, it's something that can be easily done, efficiently done, and it moves the whole project forward. And then, as we've talked, also gives us the option, the ability then to create a stadium at the high school, which then possibly gives us the opportunity to say, what do we want to do with the property in Clark's Green? Okay, but we don't have those options if we don't do that. You know, all these things, it's.
Sure. They all go off.
You're not talking about, like in the design work that we're talking about, that you mentioned, actually. It's the middle school design work and the elementary school design work. We're not yet, I think we all agree that we want to do it. I mean, that's what I've heard. But the STEM project and the library design work, that's going to be somewhere down the future, right?
Right.
So like, if you think, this is how I think about it.
No. I mean, like originally.
In like next month.
But it'd be an
Like next
addendum.
month,
design work, we
or 2
would
weeks
have
from
that.
now. Eventually, we would design it, but I don't think that we would not from what you were proposing,
No, it would
right?
be an addendum, right? I'm not putting every single project,
Okay.
because,
It would be designed at some point, but I would like personally to see the design work for all the elementary schools completed so that we can decide which projects,
Delegated, yeah.
economies of scale to do during the summers. But
I
like the
agree
high
with you on that.
school,
I agree with that.
when I, and this is just me, but when I approach this, I think about like we've all, what I've been hearing is everybody wants to do something at every school. And if we next week or 2 weeks from now do what you're saying and hire them to design the middle school and all 4 elementary schools, we get that bus moving. It takes a while to get the design work done, right? And then at the high school, if we do what we can do now, which is the stuff that's outside, some stuff that's outside, that's something at the high school. Might not be the highest priority, but it's something at the high school. And then eventually, because we can't do all this in 2 years. Like this is going to take,
No.
if we did all this stuff,
No,
it's going to take 7 years.
But to the extent you do the design work, doesn't mean you have to do that next. It just means you've got those
Yeah,
plans.
you're ready to
and
go.
then-
That's
And
right.
then you have a better idea of the overall project cost.
Right.
Because my concern is going to be, you're going to design the middle school, you're going to design your elementaries.
Yeah.
And oops, that's $90 million.
Right.
And now you don't possibly have enough to do what you'd like to do at the high school.
Right.
Whereas you design it all and you get, it all comes in, and now we have a lump sum, and we say, okay, this is more money than we think we can afford.
So
What
you're saying-
trade-offs are we going to make over the whole thing?
So you're
What
saying
would
to
be the
engage,
downside of not doing that?
but you're saying to engage
We
them to
should get
do
all
the
that.
design for the high school too,
Yeah.
right?
It-
They might not do that the first day, but like hire
No,
them to do it.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, I think, that's my point. I think otherwise,
Yeah, we
my
might in
fear,
2 years.
we all have an idea of we all have the thought that we need to do work on these buildings. Each one of us has a different thought of what that is, and each one of us has a different priority. But part of those desires and priorities are based upon our perceptions of what the cost and what the project is. And until we have something more concrete, I'm not sure we can make good
You're
decisions.
talking about investing some time
Yes,
and some money
I'd rather spend,
today
yeah,
to give us the tools we need
my
tomorrow.
preference would be to spend the money with KCBA
I agree.
now,
On all of it.
even though maybe we don't do any of it, but at least we have that data to help us make the decision that we need to make for the
Right.
community and for the district.
So Mike, help me out, 'cause it's been a minute. Since I've done some design work, but it isn't just architects. So I get a little bit of agita. Like I'm comfortable with designing a middle school in the elementary schools. I know that that's going to push our capacity because the design work means interaction with the architects and the principals, the administrators, the students, the teachers, everybody taking a look at every nook and cranny that you've talked about to say, even down to the flow of students. How do we want them entering a building, moving from class to class? How do they go to the art rooms versus the industrial arts rooms versus the library? But like, they're all questions. KCBA and the architects, the project managers designing it don't know. So they're going to have to come in. We're going to talk about this. They're going to work with Mario. They're going to go into the bottom of like Clark Summit Elementary and walk down like, all right, tell me about like, when do the kids go to the bathroom? Are these bathrooms big enough? Or so, while, we could say, we're going to have you do all this work at one time, there's a lot of inputs to generate the outputs that you want.
Well, not only that, but it flies in the face of what we agreed to, I think, in general about being agile. So we're doing planning, we're doing the costing, doing a bunch of design up front with no return. It flies in the face of being agile here. So I think we need return on the small amount that we are borrowing, show output or outcomes of it. You can't do that if you're just designing stuff. I know you keep you busy.
I agree with it. It's a good point. We're going to work really hard to make sure there's not an oops, it's not going to happen. And during that time, we can look and make sure in every meeting, every month, we provide, here's an updated scope, here's an updated cost. Both of those things are important. So if somebody doesn't get back later and they're doing high school, I always thought we were really on time. We're actually not. This that scope, this or that cost. So on all of those questions, middle school has one, all 4 elementaries has another chunk. We constantly providing updates on budgets and things like that to make sure we don't go over. That way, to your point as well, and to your point, which is good, I thought that as well. It's like, I don't know, we can handle it. I don't know, you can handle it. 6 building projects at a time. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of going all of that stuff can be sitting there. We know what that is. If at some point construction costs double again, we can come back to, hey, that high school STEM edition we talked about starting to get more expensive. So we can kind of update the budget of that as we go, even if we're not designing it, just to make sure we're staying within this 5 or 7 years.
Yeah. And so just along those same lines, I mean, I think it makes sense to, because it sounds like we're not on the same page in terms of priority, and I don't think we have to be right now. But, you know, I mentioned last meeting, I think, about there are techniques to maximize value in the shortest amount of time. I mean, these things exist. They're very easy, and maybe we should start applying that. For example, shortest job waited first. The very common algorithm that if you want to deliver the most value in the shortest amount of time, there's ways to do that. But I think, and it's not like what we want to do, it's what provides the most value in the shortest amount of time. And those things, now, determining the value for each thing, that could be an interesting conversation, but it's pretty easy after that. And that shows what we should work on. It has nothing to do with what we want. No one really cares what we want. I like to deliver value to the district in the shortest amount of time. And that's one way you can do it.
And I think we're on like, I think, at least I am on the same page with you on that. And that I mentioned this at the last meeting when I said, you know, I put the fields as the lowest priority, and it is, you know, maybe it's $5 to $7 million, and I lump that in with the high school only because I see it not at it's just there on the property, so I just lump it in. I told Mike that 20 million because it was just that. It's quick. It's a deliverable out to the community that everybody can do, right, and get on it fast. And the elementaries, because we're not doing, at least as proposed, heavy renovation. That can be done in the summers. And as Mike has explained, the nice thing about the types of renovations that we're talking about in the elementary schools is you see them and you notice them. There's no carpet that's dirty when you walk in. It's clean floors. It's painted. There's new lights. There's sinks. The bathrooms are ADA. And that isn't, these aren't projects, and correct me if I'm wrong, where we're saying, hey, look, we got to get some trailers, got to move kids. This is as minimal disruption. Take out Clark Summit because it's big, right? You can come into South Abington at the end of the year and knock some out in the summer, get pretty far along. And if you got to come back in the next summer to knock the rest out, you can. Nobody knows the difference except for when they walk in and say, oh my gosh, I've got new desks, new chairs, new lab equipment. It's quick and and the outcomes are seen.
Yeah, I think to your point about value, it's your priority as well. The challenge is it's going to take 3 years. So there's a couple of things that you can do in this period to get going and do those smaller things earlier. It's a great idea. Even getting started on tonight on this school, it's a big project that will take 3 years before we're back to
Okay, Michelle?
It's not really a question, it's a comment. The high school, I know we need new fields. I know our fields need to be redone. I struggle at this time with if we're not going to do academic changes in the high school on using that low-lying fruit money for fields. I would rather put that few $1 million into at least new labs, new academics. We did just recently, in the last, 8 years, put in a turf field and a new, I know we need new fields. Let me preface that. But I think it's time for us, at least at the high school, to do some academic adjustments with that low lining funds that are easy to use, that we can get to do first. That's just my opinion. I know I sit alone in that. I was on the committee to put in all new fields at the high school, and I've been studying it for a long time, but anytime we've done something like that, we have to really look at, and our labs are a mess. Our academic labs are in dire need. So I would not be in favor of that right at this time. I am in total favor of redoing our fields, so, but not at this time.
Mrs. Henderson.
I just want to jump back to what we were talking about, design work. We were saying if, obviously it'd be nice to have a picture of what all 6 buildings would look like, and then we could figure out what gets, the timeline and expenses. But if we're saying that doing 5 or 6 schools at one time is too big of a task, then do we break it down and do the design work for the middle school and the high school? Like start with those 2 projects. I know that the elementary schools, their projects are smaller and they'll go quicker. But if you're saying if we're consulting with all the administrators and going through the flow of the building and, going through every, nook and cranny of every building, is it too much work up front?
The scope of the elementary school projects is much more straightforward. So at the middle school, we're actually going to principals and teachers, et cetera, whatever the thing is, it's elementary, middle, it's the idea of classroom, right? So there's designing involved. The middle school is really infrastructure replacement. So a lot of that is, I mean, the art teacher was talking about the boiler that's coming from the campus. So, and because it's all duplicate work, there's some efficiencies there in choosing. So we can sit with principals and certainly, we're going to look at every building individually, a few of the security issues. There's a bit there. There's the taxing on what it will take for the district is a lot less in the elementary school equation because it really is replacing things you already have.
More simplistic.
That bathroom is going to be a bathroom. Now it's going to be where it be applied, like the fixtures, it's going to be all cleaned up, but it stays a bathroom. So we don't really have to have a conversation about what academic upgrades we can do in this space. So to the point about doing it in high school, that does involve those conversations. So it's the high school and middle school is much more academic focused with having new species versus the elementary school, which is helping academics by just fixing the infrastructure.
Thank you.
But
I just want to, and Ms. Terry and I both coach at the school, and I know how supportive you are of sports, so don't take this the wrong way. I do disagree on the timing of those fields. I agree with Dr. Schaefer. This is low-hanging fruit that you could go after right now. But I also think, and I know we've all talked about this, and we're all trying to figure out how to do it. I am highly confident that if we start a private capital campaign, that we can raise a very significant amount of money to go towards not just the sports, but the auditorium, the fields, and all the things that we're talking about doing that can eventually offset not all of those costs, but a lot of them. And I just would hate to wait when we have this window of opportunity. It's going to take a while to design all this other stuff. And we have this window of opportunity to start doing something. You talk about Mr. Robeson's point, like adding value. Believe me, academics come first. Everybody preaches that. But there are thousands of kids that use our extracurricular facilities every day. Just walk around and look. And the value that we can create right now, I think, is very significant. And I would support, just for the record, I would support doing that. But also, we got to figure this capital campaign.
Well, I would support your capital campaign 100%, and if we could do that on our fields, I would be 100%.
okay. Anyone else? Ms. Hildebrand.
So my only question was just clarifying what Gretchen had said. So you would say it's more efficient to design and put all the money towards all of the middle schools, or excuse me, all of the elementary schools versus getting a design for that upgrade for the labs for the high school. That is, we all agree potentially on the middle school project. So then what's the next project in terms of prioritizing all of the elementary schools versus getting a design on the high school? So was your position that it's just much more simplistic to take all of these schools all collectively than getting a design on the high school and moving that up the line?
Yeah, I think the middle school is the bigger projects that can take more time. So getting that started right away, we can document that by having those meetings and get that started as their development, as their year process, just approval of each building condition. So get that started. That's the biggest priority within that team for the condition to get that done. The elementary schools again are repetitive enough, understood, but that's a way to get going. So those are smaller, less taxing fees that the district would have. So if we take, let's say, a year, 14 months, so by next summer, summer 25, we're ready to go out to bid for the middle school. That goes out to bid, that starts construction in the fall. Then in the fall, we start having those same conversations with the high school. So now as that's being constructed, we don't really have to think about it, because all the thinking was done. So we just got their building it, then we jump in and start talking about high school. That also gives you another year or so to think about this. Hey, there's a plan saying about labs. What kind of labs should they do? Maybe somebody goes, you know what, those 2 labs are fine, what we really need is an earth science. Oh, okay. So you can still be having those conversations internally while that's all happening. And we just line that up right after another. So there's a design, we don't design the construction deal in middle school, and then start the design of the high school. The design of the high school will happen right after the design of the middle school. So we would be able to right off the.
Thank you.
Anything else? Dr. Schaefer, any wrap up?
Yeah, appreciate you coming. I appreciate
Mike, thank you
everybody
very
coming.
much.
Another, I think, a very productive work session. We got to talk out a lot. I think, and in our next meeting, we got a lot on the agenda, and time to get moving.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I looked on that. You paid
Make it rain.
$450,000 total.
It's a
All
good
right.
thing we had all these chairs set up, Mr. Acker.
Pardon?
It's a good thing we had all these chairs set up for tonight, Mr. Acker.
Don't you see them all there? I see them. I see a white rabbit
I see lots of
there. I see
people.
a